Paul Cézanne's influence on modern art cannot be overstated. He was not just a painter, but a revolutionary figure in the art world. His work marked the beginning of a new way of looking at and creating art. Where many artists before him focused on creating realistic depictions of the world, Cézanne was focused on how to express the underlying structure of the world around him. He believed that all things in nature could be reduced to basic shapes like spheres, cones, and cylinders. This idea helped him to break away from the traditional approach to art, where artists were expected to focus on precise detail. Instead, Cézanne focused on the basic forms that made up objects and scenes, showing the world as a collection of geometric shapes and patterns. This focus on structure and form was groundbreaking and influenced many later movements, including Cubism and abstract art. His use of color was also revolutionary. Instead of painting with a palette of just a few basic colors, Cézanne often used bold, contrasting hues to create depth and dimension in his work. He would place colors next to each other in a way that made them seem to vibrate and come to life. In some of his paintings, you can see that the colors do not blend smoothly, but are left as blocks of color that interact with one another. This technique was considered unusual at the time, but was part of his effort to break free from traditional methods and explore new ways of seeing. Cézanne was also fascinated by light and how it affected the world around him. He paid close attention to how sunlight changed the colors and textures of objects, often painting the same scene at different times of day to capture this effect. The way he used light in his paintings added to the sense of depth and movement that became a hallmark of his style. It was through his exploration of these elements that Cézanne became a key figure in the development of modern art. However, it wasn't always clear that Cézanne would go down this path. When he was younger, Cézanne attended school in Aix-en-Provence and then moved to Paris to study art. In Paris, he faced many challenges as a young artist. He struggled to find his place in the art world, and his work was not well received by critics. In fact, many critics considered his early works to be too strange and unfinished. They did not understand his unusual use of color and form, and they were confused by his abstract approach. At first, Cézanne was deeply affected by this criticism. He withdrew from the art scene and focused on developing his skills in isolation. He returned to his hometown of Aix-en-Provence, where he found peace and inspiration in the landscape around him. In the quiet beauty of the countryside, Cézanne was able to think deeply about his art and develop his own unique style. He spent years painting the same landscapes over and over again, each time finding new ways to capture their essence. It was during this period that Cézanne's distinctive approach to painting began to emerge. He also painted still lifes, portraits, and scenes of everyday life, always seeking to show the world in his own way. He did not care about following the rules of traditional painting. Instead, he wanted to create something new and exciting. While many of his contemporaries were focused on painting what was popular or fashionable, Cézanne's art was always focused on personal expression. As his work evolved, more and more artists began to see the brilliance in his approach. Although Cézanne did not achieve great fame during his lifetime, he was slowly gaining recognition. In his later years, he was invited to show his work at exhibitions, and he began to attract the attention of younger artists. He became friends with some of the most influential artists of the time, including the famous artist Camille Pissarro. Pissarro and Cézanne shared similar ideas about painting, and they often worked together, exchanging ideas and techniques. This friendship was important for Cézanne, as it allowed him to feel more confident in his artistic choices. Over time, his art was recognized not just for its unique style, but also for its intellectual depth. In his paintings, Cézanne was not simply creating images of the world. He was asking big questions about the nature of reality and how we understand the world around us. By breaking things down into basic shapes and focusing on the structure of objects, he was pushing viewers to look at the world in a new way. Cézanne was also deeply interested in the idea of perspective. He experimented with different angles and viewpoints in his work, often showing objects from unusual perspectives. This gave his paintings a dynamic quality, as though they were constantly shifting and changing. In some of his works, it can seem as though the objects are about to move or change shape, adding to the sense of energy in the painting. Cézanne's work also challenged the way people thought about time. He was not interested in capturing a single moment in time, but in showing the flow of time and change. This can be seen in his landscapes, where he would paint the same scene over and over again at different times of day, or in different weather conditions. By doing this, he was able to show the way light and atmosphere change, and how the landscape itself is always in motion. Cézanne's paintings remind us that the world is not static, but is always changing and evolving. This idea was important in the development of modern art, where artists began to focus more on the process of creating art, rather than just the final product. Cézanne's work was an inspiration to many famous artists of the 20th century. Pablo Picasso, one of the most important figures in modern art, was particularly influenced by Cézanne. Picasso admired the way Cézanne broke objects down into simple shapes, and used color to express the essence of a scene. Other artists, such as Georges Braque, were also inspired by Cézanne's focus on form and structure. They saw in Cézanne's work a new way of understanding space and volume, which helped lead to the development of Cubism. Cubism, as a movement, was all about breaking objects into geometric shapes and showing them from multiple viewpoints. This was a direct result of Cézanne's experiments with form and perspective. Although Cézanne's influence on Cubism was huge, his impact on modern art went even further. His focus on abstraction and the use of color and form to express deeper meanings was a key inspiration for the development of abstract expressionism and other modern art movements. Cézanne's legacy has only grown over time. Today, he is considered one of the most important figures in the history of art, and his work continues to be celebrated around the world. His paintings can be found in major museums, and his influence is still felt by artists working today. Although Cézanne is no longer alive, his paintings continue to inspire and challenge viewers. They invite us to see the world in a new way, to look beyond what is immediately visible, and to understand the world in its simplest, most fundamental forms. Through his work, Cézanne showed that art is not just about what we see on the surface, but about how we understand and interpret the world around us. His paintings are timeless, continuing to speak to people of all ages and backgrounds. Cézanne's art is a reminder that creativity has the power to change the way we see the world and the way we think about life. It challenges us to break free from convention and explore new ways of expressing ourselves. Through his dedication to his craft and his willingness to take risks, Cézanne became a pioneer of modern art. He is a symbol of the power of art to transform not only the way we see the world, but also the way we understand ourselves. Cézanne's legacy will continue to inspire future generations of artists, reminding them that true art comes from within, and that the world is full of endless possibilities for those willing to look at it from new perspectives.